If I may, dun po kasi sa position paper nila, hindi ko pa rin po maintindihan ano po ang specific link that RBH7 has concerning national security.
Mr. Chair, the reservation of DepEd, as stated in the position paper and has repeatedly discussed, is the possible limitation of control over the curriculum and how it is to be administered in the event that legislation would not sufficiently provide for control. And what we are just concerned about is if in case such situation where no sufficient control is required, there may be an unfortunate situation where the curriculum or the teachings that may be provided run contrary to our principles and values and ideologies as presently required in our Constitution. It's that general reservation,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
pasensya na po, Mr. Chair. Ang pagkaintindi ko, ang sagot ng ating Undersecretary from DepEd is baka yung morals and values dun sa curriculum ng mga foreign institution will run in contrast to the values of the Filipinos. So let's say, for example, teenage pregnancy. Does that run in contrast to the values of Filipinos?
That is, perhaps that is not what is contemplated. If there are ideologies that are not consistent with our current ideologies and principles as provided in our
So,
Constitution.
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, pagkaintindi ko, the Department of Education still holds oversight powers to these institutions. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's correct, Mr. Chair. That's correct.
So therefore, Mr. Chair, with the statement that they might be left and they might be teaching the wrong ideologies, this is giving a false interpretation of the real content of RBH 7. Yeah, the reason why I'm asking this, Mr. Chair, is that we all know that the Department of Education is a government institution. So kung mali yung kanilang pag-akala na mawawalan ng oversight ang Philippine government on the institutions coming in if we open our country to investors, I think that's a very wrong interpretation, Mr. Chair, because that's basic in the authority and obligations of the Department of Education. You cannot relinquish that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the reservation really revolves around the, if I may quote from the position paper, the phrase, unless otherwise provided by law, and its underlying rationale that could potentially serve as a gateway to expand the scope and control and administration over educational institutions not solely by citizens of the Philippines. And we will proceed to the last paragraph, if I may, Mr. Chair. In view of the foregoing, the department opposes the amendments specifically vest the possibility of vesting full control and administration of basic education to aliens through legislation. So we agree, Mr. Chair, that the DepEd under the current system exercises supervision, if not regulation, over the implementation of the curriculum. We are just concerned about the possibility that through subsequent legislation, this may be diminished.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, Your Honors, medyo kinakabahan kasi ako. Because of course we have heard DepEd. And if their interpretation is that, let's say, if you have an UK standard of basic education, or let's say you have an American standard of basic education, or let's say you have the Singapore standard of basic education, ang ibig ba sabihin nun magtuturo yung mga ito ng maling ideologies which will pose a threat to national security? Because I really don't find, Mr. Chair, the connection between national security and education. My point here, Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, is hindi po ba medyo mahirap ng isang napaka-importanting ahensya ng gobyerno, which is the Department of Education, ay tila nililihis ang usapin ng resolution of both houses number 7, which is the economic chacha, to national security. Kasi later on, medyo mahirap yan. Baka mamaya mapagbintangan na we're using like security funds or intel funds. Matanong ko lang, Mr. Chair, the problem on some, I'm not saying many, the problem of some possible teachers putting in wrong ideologies that is a threat to national security. Is this among foreign legitimate professors or is this among Filipino teachers? Sa pagkakaintindi nyo.
Right now, Mr. Chair, I don't have specific data on that, but the DepEd simply is concerned about the possibility, and should the amendments perhaps not be open-ended unless otherwise provided by law, then there is an assurance that regulation of the government over the curriculum and the manner by which it is administered consistent with the national values and principles, if that may be the case.
Again, Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, we have to separate national security from the morals and the values that DepEd is talking about. I think these are two. No, I am not saying I think. I am definitely sure that if we talk about Filipino culture, morals, and values, this is a separate entity from national security concerns. Kasi Mr. Chair, ituhog lang po natin dun sa nakaraang mga budget hearings. I was actually very supportive for the Department of Education getting confidential funds. Simply because I heard the claimor of the Department of Education that our students are seemingly being penetrated by wrong ideologies. Kaya nga, suportado ko nung panahon na yon na may bigyan ng confidential fund ang DepEd. But my understanding, this is a problem that was coming internally from the provinces. So mukhang hindi po ito related doon sa economic chacha. So I just want the DepEd to be very clear about this. Kasi if we say that if the allegation or the fear of possible trespassing of moralities, values, and culture of Filipinos will transcend to threats to national security, medyo kinakabahan po ako na this is a statement coming from the Department of Education because apparently and very glaring, it's a twisted statement, Mr. Chair. Kasi magkaiba po talaga ang Filipino culture, Filipino morals and values versus vis-a-vis national security. Ang pagkaintindi ko po, national security is actually a threat to our country in so far as, let's say, a pandemic or let's say insurgency, let's say terrorism.
Mr. Chair, with due respect, we believe that the incorrect ideologies, if taught to the youth during which time that it is the formative stage of our citizens, it will and may pose a threat to.
So, Mr. Chair, may I ask DepEd, do you know of any institution worldwide that invested in other countries and ended up teaching ideologies concerning national security? Meron po ba sa buong mundo? And you mingle with other DepEd officials from all over the world.
I don't have specific information, Madam Chair, but
would you know of a specific school or a specific country na binuksan nila, nagkaroon sila ng economic chacha, they opened their country, and a school or an institution entered their country and taught wrong ideology to their children? Do you have any country in mind or any school, to be exact?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any specific country in mind. I would just like to respectfully reiterate that the reservation of DepEd is the diminution of control over the curriculum as to what will be taught Filipino citizens. And
so in other words, Mr. Chair, ang official na pinapanindigan at binabasehan ng Department of Education is widow-widow lang. Because, I mean, this official opinion of the Department of Education is widow lang. Because my understanding, I wouldn't take offense if it's one of the NGOs. That I will fully understand if it's one of the private associations. But if it's a statement coming from the government, the Department of Education per se, and the basis of this memorandum is actually purely widow, or let's say, hindi natin matumbok ang naging basehan. Let me cite, for example, you mentioned, baka yung ituro ay mga maling ideology, and you have no data of any school or any country who has this experience. And again, saying that encroaching on the morals and values will result to a threat on national security. This bothers me, Mr. Chair, with due courtesy. Kasi when a government entity or a government institution makes a memorandum, meron niyang dapat basis. So may I ask if this is really an opinion of the Department of Education, or is it purely the fear of an individual who influenced the crafting of this official stand with regards to RBH7?
Mr. Chair, this is the stand of the Department of Education, and the concern is to ensure that the curriculum that will be taught in the Philippines to schools attended by Filipino citizens will be consistent with the government-prescribed curriculum, Mr. Chair.
Is it not that is part of your obligation, your responsibilities as the Department of Education of the Philippines?
Yes, precisely. It is already a part of our mandate, Madam Chair. And the provision which opens up to possible legislation that may deviate from that is the concern.
Mr.
Madam
Chair, can I have a specific example? Let's say, what specific legislation do you fear of? Para naman po guided kaming mga legislators. Let's say, okay, for the sake of academic discussion, RBH7 is approved, na-approve ito. Ano yung kinakatakutan mo ang gagawing batas ng mga mambabatas ng Pilipinas that will lead to national security threat?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, in an extreme case, if there is a legislation that establishes an international school and said legislation exempts the school from government regulation, government control and administration, Madam Chair, because the phrase...
Mr. Chair, if I may, sayang kasing oras, please be specific. What specific legislation are you afraid of? Granting for the sake of argument, RBH7 was approved. Ano yung kinakatakutan yung panukalang batas na sabihin natin ipa-file ni Congressman Dalipe or ni Congressman Gonzales or ni Congressman J.J. Suarez? Ano po ang specific batas na kinakatakutan nyo? Because your answer is really very
Yes, Madam Chair, a law that would establish a school owned by foreign entities without regulation by the Philippine government, open to Filipino citizens. That would be...
a school? Your fear is that Congress and Senate will legislate the creation of a school?
That is the contemplation of the memorandum, Mr. Chair. If there is an establishment of educational institutions where the learners are Filipinos, but the control and administration over said school is limited or non-existent as far as the Philippine government is concerned.
So let's say, for example, you have the International School of Manila and you have British School Manila. Are these schools under the control of DepEd?
By provision of law, yes. In the case of the British school, as earlier discussed, the RA provides for two provisions by which government exercises regulation. And I understand that these provisions are there because the Constitution expressly provides that the control and administration of educational institutions shall be vested in citizens of the Philippines, Mr. Chair.
No, Mr. Chair, balikan po natin yung aking tanong, no? Ang tanong ko po kasi it became a very major core of your objection. Your fear of your concerns regarding national security. So ano po ang specific, ano pa ang tuhog? Tumbukin natin. Let us not go to motherhood statements. Let's say you have here our three distinguished colleagues, Congressman Dalipe, Congressman Gonzales, and Congressman J.J. Suarez. Ano po ang kinakatakutan yung gagawin nilang panukalang batas na sa pananaw nyo will lead to major concerns on national security? Ang ibig nyo bang sabihin, takot kayo na merong mga estudyanteng banyaga at hindi Pilipino at dumarama sila sa Pilipinas and this will pose as a national security threat? That's my understanding of
Mr. Chair, the reservation does not refer to any specific member of Congress. Just to be clear,
No.
it does not refer
Mr.
also
Chair, if
to
I may,
this specific.
Huwag kasi nating lihisin. I'm giving you an example.
Yes, ma'am. If I may
Yes, I
respond.
only wanted one question. That's on national security. So my question again is, what is the specific, tumbukin mo please. Tumbukin mo ano ba ang pwedeng mangyari kapag nagkaroon tayo ng economic chacha and this will lead to national security concerns. Pointing our three leaders here was just an example para mas maging specific. And you're telling me that hindi mo tinutumbok na baka silang mag-file. No, that's just an example. You have members of Congress here listening and also on Zoom. So, pag pinasa, let me rephrase my question. Pag pinasa ang RBH7 and RBH6 ng Senado, ano ang specific na panukalang batas na kinakatakutan nyo, na sinasabi nyo na paulit-ulit that this will lead to grave concerns on national security? Ang kinakatakutan nyo ba dahil papayagan yung ibang mga banyagang estudyante na pumasok dito ng elementary at high school, sila'y maging terorista?
Mr. Chair,
And values.
morals,
and Filipino
values,
culture.
ideologies, and other matters, Mr. Chair, that if in the event that the control or regulation of government is withdrawn, there would be no accountability on said
Ang ibig ba natin
school.
sabihin, baka sakaling mawalan ng kontrol ang gobyerno at ngayon yung school na yon o yung paaralan na yon ay ituturo sa mga estudyante ang pagiging terorista. Is that your specific fear?
Not specifically that.
Then what is the national security concern that you are concerned about? What was discussed within the premises of the Department of Education? Because this is an official statement. And my understanding is that this was thoroughly discussed by Execom, the USEX, the ASEX, and all those involved in crafting this. Because it's a government institution. Ano po ba ang naging reason? Yun lang kung meron. But Mr. Chair, if I may, kung kunyari medyo talaga namang pati sila nalilito dahil hindi rin nila maintindihan yung kanilang official stand, then we will accept that.
Mr. Chair, I will quote from the position paper, the possible opening up of the control and supervision over schools.
Yeah, again, Mr. Chair, I've
yeah.
read this position paper more than 20 times. And I'm sorry, my question has not been answered. And I do hope that maybe DepEd can just write us and send the August committee an explanation of the link between RBH7 and national security, because I don't want our people to believe in the fallacy that economic chacha and national security is related. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and maraming salamat po.
Okay, floor leader.
Wala na po. So
We're done.
Mr. Chairman,